What's going on, everybody? In the dog days of summer here on a Monday night, I am coming to you live from the Maryland studio. It is Gunzpicks, and this is the Gunzpicks college football preview show. And as we get all the meetings, the SEC meetings and the Big 12 meetings, this is the first level of before college football starts. And I am excited, and I'm joined here with my man, the myth, the legend. You can find him on the Hustle podcast. It's Chris Thurston at CT Bets. I'm going to pass it to him with a couple guns. What's going on, my friend?
Guns. I love that. That's always a requirement when I'm on this show, is for you to blast me. Favorite part of the show. So it's good to be blasted. That means football season is right around the corner. I think it's 6 more Sundays, I read, until the first NFL Sunday from yesterday.
Yeah, I always remember when I was an 8-year-old, you always count the days of Christmas and you put the little mouse over. You had the little calendar here. I have one of those for college football.
Yeah.
And it usually starts around July, right after the All-Star break is when I get my little calendar out and I start marking the days down. I can't wait for this season. It's going to be absolutely electric. But we are here to talk about one conference and one conference only. It is the Big 12 Conference. We're going to break this down, every single team for this episode. So a lot of these teams we're going to try to fire really quick, and then we're going to kind of go to the nuts and bolts of the conference. Probably the top 5 teams will break down a little bit further, more in depth, as they say. And we're going to start this off right now, but we have to play the song first, don't we? That's right. We're going to get it started here. A lot of changes here in the Big 12 this season. They added a few teams. It's kind of expanded this conference a lot, but don't fret. You know, Texas, Oklahoma leaving the conference next season, I believe. So we're going to start this off with one of the teams that is joining the conference from the AAC. It is the Cincinnati Bearcats. Last season, 9-4, but they lose Luke Fickell. He goes over to Wisconsin. 9 returning starters this season, 3 offense, 6 defense. Scott Satterfield comes over from Louisville to take over the job. 53rd toughest schedule. Over and under on this one is 5.5 wins for this team. I'll pass it to you, CT. Any thoughts on the Bearcats?
Yeah, I mean, right, they come in this year. They got a new head coach, new trigger man, and they're in a brand new Power 5 conference now. You said Satterfield is the coach. Yeah, he is. And honestly, I was pretty shocked with that hire, Guns. He didn't exactly set the world on fire at Louisville for the few years that he was there. And I don't really think he's a great fit into the Big 12. I don't know what they were kind of thinking there. So, I mean, you go from Luke Fickell to Scott Satterfield. I think that's a major downgrade. Emory Jones, he transfers in, right? He transfers again. He'll be the starting QB. They almost get nothing back in terms of starters on offense. I think there's like 1 offensive lineman back. They got a decent amount left back on defense, 5 or 6, but I think it's going to be a few years for Cincinnati to recover from losing head coach Luke Fickell. I think the Bearcats are in for a long season. 5.5 that's a right number. I have them around 5 wins.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with you on this one. I think this is going to be one of the bottom feeders of the conference this year. Big transition going from the AAC to the Big 12 on this one. And you mentioned it. Ben Bryant did leave the program. He went to Northwestern, ironically enough. And then you saw what happened with Fitzgerald getting fired. So maybe that wasn't the right move for him. Then they add the transfer, the journeyman, Emory Jones. I don't know if this is an upgrade or a downgrade or an even keel, but with the transition at the coach, who knows on this one. Running backs, they lose their top running back, and there was a big drop off from 1 to number 2. All their wide receivers are gone, and they're just basically flooded with P5 transfers. Only 1 starter on the offensive line. Defense, top 4 tacklers are gone from last season. This is a team that had 44 sacks last season. But take into account they had 11 against Tulsa, I believe. So that was that kind of like inflated the number a little bit. 10.7% sack rate. The D-backs, only 1 starter on this one. This is a team that always had the good secondary. This season they're going to have a tremendous drop off because there's no real true stars on this one. So overall, new coaching staff. going with, primarily Louisville's coaching staff on this one. The toughest games on the schedule, they have to go to Pitt, Oklahoma, Baylor at home, and then Oklahoma State. Those are the toughest games I see on the schedule. But it's going to be a tough transition for this team. I think it's going to take a few years if Satterfield can build this team up to a P5 conference challenger. So 5.5. I'm not touching this one, but you're basically saying, is this a bowl team or is this not a bowl team? In my opinion, I don't think it is, but I'm not going to play anything as far as features are concerned. Moving on to another AAC team, the Houston Cougars, 8-5 last season, 5-3 in the conference. 12 returning starters for this team, 5 on the offense, 7 on the defense. Dan Holgerson, surprisingly, still has his job there, 5th year at the program. Houston, Texas is the city they're from. 33rd toughest schedule. 4.5 wins on this one. A little bit interesting. CT, what are your thoughts on the Cougs?
Yeah, Houston finally now a Power 5 conference team after all those years, and what do they get for a present for that? They get one of the to face off in one of the toughest schedules in the nation, like you said, Guns and Holgerson. I'm shocked he's still there. He hasn't really done anything special since he arrived. He's got a 27-20 record overall as the head coach for the Cougs. They get the transfer. Triggerman Donovan Smith. He comes over from Texas Tech, the Red Raiders. He should help. They get back a decent amount on offense. Very, very scarce on defense here. I think they're going to be a bottom feeder team here in the Big 12, and it's going to be a rude awakening for the Cougs. And shocked if Holgerson is still the coach after this year, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I was actually hoping that this total was a little bit higher, maybe 5.5 and 6.
Yeah,
I probably would have taken the under on this one. Just on the fact that look who they lost on the offensive side. Offense has been their bread and butter on this one. They lose Clayton Tune. They lose their top. I think he's the number 2 or number 3 top passer in the history of Houston. And then you lose their top receiver in Tank Dell. Tank Dell almost had 1,400 yards receiving last season. And they lose their top rusher as well, who is Clayton Tune was their top rusher last year.
Yeah.
But you look at them not from the offense, you throw that out the window. A lot of experience lost there. You did mention that they do have the mobile quarterback Donovan Smith coming in, who didn't do too well, who did okay for Texas. He had 66% pass completion rate, 12 touchdowns, 8 INTs. He did throw a lot of picks, so a little concerns on that one. Defensively, Houston loses 8 of their top 9 tacklers.
Yeah.
I mean, we could break them down. They lose their number 1, and their linebacker quorum is completely depleted. I think if there's any strength that this team has, is their defensive line. 2 starters back, and they actually get a guy from Oklahoma that had 110 tackles as a linebacker last year. They're going to transition him as a pass rusher or an edge rusher, it looks like. But overall, top QB, rusher, and receiver gone from them. Holgerson moving to the Big 12. He has done this before. He did that with West Virginia, Big East to the Big 12. They went from a 10-3 team to a 7-6 team in his first season in the conference. He does know the conference. However, I just think there's going to be a huge drop off here for Houston. This is a complete rebuild.
Yep.
And I don't know. I don't know if they make a bowl, if they're even lucky enough to make a bowl. I think maybe Dana can keep his job. But man, if he gets 4 losses or meets this win total altogether, I don't know if they want to keep Holgerson as the head coach of the Cougars. So we'll see what happens in the season.
Tough opening game too versus UTSA.
Oh yeah,
I mean, really tough game. I think that game's a pick right now. I kind of like UTSA.
Trailers there. Frank Harris is back for them. Yeah. I mean, he's been there. I think he's my age. Yeah. He might be.
Yeah, I think he is.
Yeah. But he's on the TB. He's on the TB12, so I believe that he's going to be okay.
They're kind of loaded this year. So
yeah, I will say they do lose their top receiver, which kind of hurts them a little bit. But I trust Trailer. Trailer just owns Texas, and he has the in on all these high school kids. So I think he's going to be able to build and recruit. And every time I think UTSA is down when they lost Sincere McCormick, what happens? He goes and shows out. So yeah, I do like UTSA a lot. But moving on to more Big 12 action on this one. We're going to go to West Virginia. Take me home, country road. Well, they were 5-7 last year, 3-6 in the conference, 13 returning starters, 6 offense, 7 on the defense. Neil Brown keeps his job when they thought he was going to get fired. Another coach on the hot seat in the Big 12. Morgantown, West Virginia. Talk about a schedule. 14th toughest in the country. Over and under on their win total is 5.5 wins. CT, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is hands down the worst team in the Big 12 in my opinion, and they're in for a long year. And from top to bottom, this is probably the worst roster in the Big 12, and it's the worst roster that West Va has had in a really long time. As far as the quarterback goes, it's still up for grabs. It's either going to be the junior Garrett Green, but probably will be Green, or the redshirt freshman. They get back 6 on offense, 4 on defense. The defense was atrocious last year. They finished in the bottom of the Big 12 in points allowed. I don't think they're going to be much better this year on D. The only thing they have going for them is they return all 5 of their starting offensive linemen. And yeah, Neil Brown is big time in the hot seat this year. This is going to be a tough year for Neil Brown, and I can't believe he's back this year. And I don't expect him back this year. I kind of like the under here. I like under 5.5. Didn't play it, but I like it.
Yeah, if there's a lean on this one, I'd probably say that this team's not going to make a bowl game. Garrett Green, I have him as maybe the projected starter on this one, but like you said, it is whoever they pick on, probably right before week 1.
Yeah.
But I like Garrett Green because it gives them that dual threat option on this one. And plus, you got to look at the losing their top rusher from last season, but they get their other 4 top rushers back. So I think it's going to be running back by committee. Very depleted on the wide receiver end as well. Kind of. Neil Brown teams kind of just want to run the ball anyways. They always have that top rusher, but I don't even know who the top rusher is on the team. Defensively, like you said, they had a 6.8% sack rate last season. Top 3 tacklers are gone on the defensive side. Defensive line looks like it's going to be a little bit weaker. Top 3 linebackers are back though, however, including their number 1 tackler. So at least the linebackers are in a decent unit. And basically, the D-backs are basically built off of transfers. So, and this is a team that was 104th versus the pass last season. So this is something that they got to improve on. Neil Brown on the hot seat. They got a tough schedule. They have to go to at Penn State. They got to play Pitt at home. And yeah, the opener, by the way,
Yeah.
and at UCF, which could be a tough game. It's never, the bounce house is always a tough place to play, whether or not that team's going to be good. At Oklahoma and at Baylor, I think those are going to be really tough spots for them. Yeah. I'm questioning this team altogether, and we may see Neil Brown. The question is, will Neil Brown make the end of the season, or will they just make the move at some point, during the season and just put in an interim? We'll see what happens, but I don't see bright lights and big dreams here for the Mountaineers. Independent moves into the conference here. It is not only the, bringing in a little bit of the Mormon flavor on this one, but we're bringing in some Cougs on this one. And a former quarterback was a big fan of the Cougs, if you know what I'm talking about. This team was 8-5 last season, 15 returning starters, 8 on the offense, 7 on the defense. Kalani Sataki is back. Provo, Utah, 37th toughest schedule in the country. Over and under is 4.5 wins. Jaron Hall is gone, but they do have a formidable replacement. What are your thoughts on the Cougars of BYU?
Yeah, this is an interesting team. Might be the most interesting team looking towards before you even preview the Big 12. There's a lot of question marks here, right? So they did pick up a couple of key transfers. That they got Slovis, the Pitt, and the USC quarterback will now be the trigger man over for the Morms here. And then they got the running back, Aiden Robbins. He's coming over from UNLV. He was at Louisville before.
Yep.
That should give them a pretty nice shot in the arm to offense from what they lost. Defense was horrendous last year, and Coach Sataki pretty much fired everyone on the defensive staff from last year. So it's going to be a lot of brand new faces here. Schedule is very tough. They have to travel to TCU, Texas, Westphal, and Okie State, and they're in a Power 5 now, so it's going to be a lot more physical for them. So I really think the majority of these the newcomers are going to have a really tough year in first year in the Big 12, and I think BYU is one of them. I think they're going to be better than Houston and Cincinnati, but I'm not expecting much from this team in their first year in the Big 12, Guns.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. I mean, granted, they did get Keaton Slovis. I mean, I think that's kind of linear as far as that goes from Jaron Hall to Slovis. But I'm not extremely high on him. I do like the running back depth that they brought in. However, you look at the offensive line. This is a group that gave their rushes 5.2 yards per carry and only gave up 13 sacks last year. And this is the full rebuild of the offensive line. I mean, there's not a lot of experience on this one. I think that group is going to be depleted. So that's going to hurt the run game. That's going to also hurt the pressure that Slovis is going to get on this one. Defense, like you said, was a problem. So they go to Weber State to go get their defensive coordinator, who was there from 2014 to 2022, turned that unit around. I think they had 6 playoff experiences when he was the defensive coordinator there. But this is a full rebuild on this one. This was a group that passing defense was 117th in the country last year. And then you got the fact that you have to adjust to the Big 12 schedule. I mean, they're facing last year they only faced 5 P5 schools. Now they have to face 10, including 5 road games in the Big 12. So they got to adjust to that. And then you got the offensive line that's not great. I don't know about this team at all, especially these teams that are transitioning from the AAC or even an independent. And then coming into the Big 12, I think it's going to take them a year or two to kind of get their bearings and then get their recruits settled, everything all together, including, dipping into the transfer portal and actually get some quality guys that know how to play at a high level. So this is a team, 4.5 wins. It could go either way. I mean, we're talking same thing with Houston and same thing with Cincinnati. These teams, I think the number, could go. I think Cincinnati, looking at them, I think they're probably a little bit higher. 4.5 is probably a little bit low on BYU. If I had to lean, I'd probably say, probably they'll find 5 wins, but I ain't playing it myself. I got better places to spend my money, so to speak. All right, now we're getting up there. Now we're getting to teams that have actually played in the Big 12. All right, I know we talked about West Virginia, but we're talking about a team that actually, for them, had a great season. Kansas Jayhawks. And I know Aaron, the kid in the chat, wants to talk about the Jayhawks. And we're going to talk about them now. 6-7 last season, 3-6 in the conference, 17 returning starters, including 10 on offense, 7 on defense. Lance Leopold got these guys cooking in his 3rd year. Actually, his 2nd year, he had them cooking. Lawrence, Kansas is the spot. 36 toughest schedule. Over and under 6.5 wins. What are your thoughts on the Jayhawks, ET?
Yeah, so Guns, Aaron and I both played this a couple weeks ago. I did his preview show on Taproom Sports, and we bet Kansas over 5.5, minus 144. That was available on FanDuel. We hit that. It's 6.5 you're seeing right now?
Yeah, it's 6.5.
Wow. Yeah, okay, so we have a nice number in pocket here, and kind of like you said, Leopold showed the world last year that Kansas is serious about changing football in Kansas, right? Everybody's used to them being a basketball team, and they're coming off the program's first bowl season since 2008. So, he goes 2-10 in his first season. So this was a big deal, making a bowl game last year. They didn't end the year great, but they started phenomenal, and injuries kind of got the best of them there. He went out and he hired Bill Snyder's son, Sean Snyder. And he's a special teams guru, and he's going to be a great addition for the Jayhawks. That's the son of Kansas State coaching legend Bill Snyder. So what does that tell you? That Bill Snyder's son is coming over to Kansas. That tells me, one thing here is that Lance Leopold and Sean Snyder are serious about football. He would not be going over to his father's arch rival if he wasn't serious and didn't think that the Jayhawks were a contender. So that gives me a lot of hope and faith in this team, and they legit might have one of the best quarterbacks and running backs in the league with Jalen Daniels and Devin Neal both returning here. They return a ton on offense. They get back 10 to be exact. And not to mention the 4 starting offensive linemen they get back to protect Daniels. All of his top wideouts and top tight ends are back as well. The offensive coordinator, Andy Koltanecki, he's very creative. Everybody loves watching him drop plays. They're going to score some points here. And their non-conference schedule is really, really weak. They should open up with 3 wins right out of the gate: Missouri State, Illinois, Nevada. Defense gets back 7 from last year. Defensive line does need some work. Schedule's tough, Guns, but you gotta play OU. You gotta play Texas. You gotta play Texas Tech, K-State. But I think they start off with 3 wins there. Okay, and then you play. I think it's BYU is your 4th game, right?
Yep.
They should be 4-0 there. I have them 4-0 there, and then I need them to win 2 games in conference with 17 returning starters and a coach on a mission to prove that he's not a fluke and last year was the real deal. I'll take my chances, man. I think this team at least wins 6 games. So over 5.5 for me. I think they can and will win games, and they'll probably upset have some big upsets this year in the Big 12 too.
So I'm going to say point for you, and then this way.
Yep.
Counterpoint for me, because
Okay.
I like the under. But I only like the under at 6.5. Because
Okay.
I only think they get 6 wins.
Yep.
Okay. So we're kind of we're meeting in the same spot. We're just getting different numbers.
Sure.
All right. I agree with you. The offense. The offense is going to be just as good as they were last year, if not better. Jalen Daniels is back. He had a tremendous year: 18 touchdowns, 4 INTs, 66.1 pass completion rate, and he was a dual threat. He could actually run the ball exceptionally well. All their top rushers are back too, which is key for Kansas's offense, including 1,000-yard rusher Devin Neal, like you said, 6.1 yards per carry. But they also added another former 1,000-yard rusher in Dylan McDuffie. He comes over from Buffalo. Yep. He was a guy that was in the program, knows Leopold's offense. Just took a year off. Now he's come back for this one. I think he's going to be, to build in terms of that running back depth. He's a good addition to them. All their top wide receivers are back, so it's going to be a proved unit, including 4 starters on the offensive line. It's an offensive line that only gave up 12 sacks last year, 5.3 yards per carry. Absolutely great in the Big 12. But the problem last year, they just couldn't stop anybody. Their defense was the problem. 469 yards last year, giving up 4.8 yards per carry on the rush, 64.7 pass completion rate, and 24 sacks, 5.6 sack rate. 5 out of their top 6 tacklers are back. D-line gets their top pass rusher back and a slew of transfers to kind of rebuild that group. Linebackers did struggle last season. That was kind of a big problem for them. 3 starters do return, and they have some depth. So we'll see if that linebacker quorum, that's going to be a key for them. They're going to have to step up because losing some people in that D-line that they lost last season, even though they do got their top pass rusher back, I think they're going to have to really button up that middle and stop the run. And then the D-backs, another problem for them, but they get all their D-backs back, top 6 return. This is a unit that was ranked 100th in defensive passing, and they add a transfer from LSU. So I think it's going to be an improved unit overall in the passing game. But I always go back to last season. They started the season 5-0 last season, and they ended 1-5, right?
Yep.
So they had 2 close wins, including a third in overtime. So I always look at these teams like, how many close wins did you have? How did you get lucky? If they were close losses, I kind of weigh them a little bit higher. But they get a lot of experience back. You can't deny this team. Every time I look at the schedule, I've done it like 3 or 4 times. Every hypothetical, I always say 6 wins. This is a 6-win team. This is a 6-win team. So I'm taking my chances on this one, but getting it at 6.5.
Yep.
I like your 5.5 over, but I like my 6.5 under. So I'm rolling with this one. Yeah, we could win at 6 wins. You said 6 wins. I say 6 wins. I think I'm taking the under on this one. Kansas Jayhawks. Yep. Under 6.5 wins. So, bang, Let's hit the button. First two plays out the gate on this one, and we're moving right forward up the ladder here for the Big 12. And speaking of ladders, Matt Campbell uh, having a rough year last year, 4-8, 1-8 in the conference, 15 returning starters, 9 on offense, 6 on defense. This is his 8th year with the team. Might be his last. Who knows? I don't know what the Cyclones think about pulling the trigger on firing a tenured coach. Ames, Iowa is the spot, and they get a tremendously tough schedule. 4th toughest in the country. Yeah. Over and under is 5.5 wins. This team had 4 wins last year. What is the books telling me? I don't know. Is it over? CT, what are your thoughts?
They really didn't get any breaks here, right? A lot of teams with the new teams coming into the Big 12 this year got a little bit of a break on the schedule. Iowa State didn't. I mean, they still have to play Oklahoma State, OU, TCU, Baylor, Kansas, and Texas, and then they finish at K-State. I mean, Matt Campbell, God, it was a tough year for the Cyclones last year. And I actually think Matt Campbell's a really great coach, but they're still like after losing all that to the NFL draft, they're still trying to rebuild from losing Purdy, Brees Hall, etc. It's been tough for Campbell. He's made a lot of changes to the offense that should help them. They get a decent amount of starters back, but honestly, the talent isn't really there.
No.
And we talked about the schedule. If there's anyone that can turn talent into something, I would say it would be Matt Campbell. 8 on offense, 7 on defense. You look at any other team, and you're probably like, oh wow, this team might be good and a little bit better than their 4-8 season record showed last year. I think they're going to be slightly better than last year. But, man, I think it's another long year for the Cyclones. Hunter Deckers is going to get another shot as being the trigger man. But I don't know. They didn't really do much in terms of the transfer portal. They're kind of coming back with the same roster. And I don't think it's the answer that they need.
Yeah, I think when you look at this team overall statistically, this was like a team that I would normally pick as an over for the next season and wins. But when you look at their schedule and you look who came back and who they lost and everything, I don't know if I can even touch this team at all. Decker, you said Hunter Decker's coming back. The one thing he needs to improve on, he needs to stop throwing picks.
Yeah,
he had 14. He had 14 picks last season, 19 touchdowns. That ratio needs to improve. 3 out of their top 4 rushers are back, but nobody had over 500 yards. There was no Brees Hall in this lineup, so it was basically running back by committee type of situation. They need to improve on the run game. 3 out of their 4 top wide receivers are back, but they lose their best guy, Xavier Hutchinson, who is the guy. He was a 1,000-yard receiver forever, and he was the focal point of the offense. 4 starters back do come back on the offensive line, and what Campbell does really well is he ends up kind of putting together a good offensive line. The run blocking was needs to improve a little bit on this one. 3.3 yards per carry. That could be a little bit more on the running back side. The pass protection, 5.4% sack rate, not bad. But I think this line with another year under their belt, I think they should improve. And what kept them in the games last season was the defense. But they only gave up 286 yards per game last season, 3.2 yards on the ground, 59% pass completion rate. But they didn't really put pressure on the quarterback. 18 sacks last season. 4 out of their 6 top tacklers gone, but including their top 2. So they're going to have to rebuild and develop there. They lose their top defensive end pass rusher as well. He goes to the NFL. I can't think of the guy's name, but he was he was a top draft pick for them. I think first rounder too.
Yeah.
So he's gone, and this is going to be a fully rebuilt unit. Number 1, 2, and number 2 tacklers gone for the linebackers. They had a transfer from Missouri, and their top safety is gone as well. So last season, this team they were 4-8 overall, but they had a plus 84 net yard average. So they're beating teams in the yardage game. They just weren't putting points on the board because of turnovers, basically. They had 6 games where they lost by a possession or less, and they blew 4 fourth quarter leads. This was a team that just was stung by bad luck. But when you do the math, they were really 5 plays away last season from being 9-3. I mean, you could just break this team down to that. That is pretty astounding. But when you look at them this season, you want to say, oh yeah, they're on the climb. Schedule wise, you just mentioned it.
Yep.
Iowa at home, Oklahoma State at home, at Oklahoma, at Baylor, at BYU, because you're dealing with the elevation issues, at Kansas State, and then they got to go to Texas at home. This is a tough schedule. Probably arguably, I think it's the toughest in the Big 12 that anybody has to face.
Yeah.
Not a team. If they get 6 wins, that's commendable for Campbell.
Impressive if they do.
Yeah. So I'm not touching this 5.5 wins. It's just something I'm just going, all right. I'm not saying they're going to go under or over. I just want to see if this team can actually get to 6. All right. Now we're going to another team that has joined the conference. It is University of Central Florida. The Knights come in 9-5 last season, 15 returning starters, 8 on the offense, 7 on defense. Gus Malzahn comes back into P5 in his 3rd year with the Knights. Orlando, Florida is the spot where the bounce house lives. Number 58. Actually, not a bad schedule. 58th toughest in the country. Over and under on them is 6.5 wins. Your thoughts on Central Florida?
Yeah, I think Central Florida is the best team out of the 4 newbies into the Big 12 this year, and Malzahn, he's done a decent job down there, Gus, and he gets back 6-6, and he was already doing a really good job. I wanted to point this out at recruiting at a Power 5 level, right? Because being the coach at Auburn for so long, that's able to help him do that. There's kids that can't go play SEC ball right now that would say, oh, you know what? Malzahn's a great coach. He did a lot of good things at Auburn for a lot of years. So let me go over to Central Florida, play at the bounce house. The tougher schedule will be the kind of the question for the Knights and most of the other newcomers to the Big 12. Decent trigger man with John Reyes Plumlee. They lose a couple wideouts, top wideouts to transfer. One to BC, other one goes to Miami, but they get back a couple of veterans, senior wideouts, Baker and Hudson, for Plumlee to toss it to. He'll have a couple targets available there. We need to replace some spots in the secondary. So Gus has kind of talked about that a lot this offseason. He's very high on his running back room. He says, he wouldn't trade his running backs for any other backs in the country. So if Gus is saying that, that's just telling you that he sees something special in that running backs room. So I think that if they could stay healthy and Plumlee could stay healthy, and they could be good, and they might make some noise. I think this is a 6-7 team win here. I think Gus has things going in the right direction for the Central Florida Knights.
Yeah, I think the full success of UCF this season is John Rhys Plumlee going to stay healthy this season? There's really no backup spine there. They lack depth at the quarterback position. This is a quarterback that put up 862 yards on the ground rushing himself, 5.4 yards per carry, 11 touchdowns. He was the heartbeat of the offense for sure. But when you got a mobile quarterback that's moving like he did, you saw it happen last year. He dealt with injuries, probably for half the season, and it really crushed that team's success. Running backs, you mentioned it. RJ Harvey is one that kind of poked out at me. 6.7 yards per carry, 5 touchdowns for him, and they got Johnny Richardson too, another guy that gets over 6 a carry. They also added another Florida transfer for depth, so I don't really know much about him, but hopefully this running back for him is in good shape. And you mentioned the wide receivers coming back; they're going to be solid there. They lose 3 starters on the offensive line, but they grab a slew of transfers with starting experience. So hopefully, over time, this group can gel. This is a group that gave up 36 sacks last season. So they got to improve on that one. Last season for the defense, only 22 sacks, 4.8% sack rate. 3 out of their 4 top tacklers returned this season. Defensive line should be solid. They're strong and developed. I think 7 out of their top 8 are back. They only get 1 starter back for the linebackers. But overall, with this team, it's the first season, big transition to go to the Big 12. I think they're going to be a tough out when they play at home against a lot of these teams. Bounce House is always a tough place to play.
Yep.
And then you have the fact that this whole season and the success of this team is going to be all predicated on the fact that is John Reese going to go a full season at 100% and not get him hurt. They have 5 Big 12 road games at Kansas State, at Kansas, at Oklahoma, at Cincy, and at Texas Tech. So tough road schedule for them in the Big 12. Over 6.5 wins. I mean, they can get 7 or 8 if they can keep John Reese Plumlee healthy, if they stay hot. But nothing I'm going to play personally myself. A lot of these, like I said before, these AAC teams, I don't know how they're going to react in the new conference. If like CT said, if there's a team that's going to be able to do it and be successful, it's going to be this team overall. Yep. So that's going to be, the team that you want to play more than anything else. But we'll have to wait and see what Gus Malzahn has planned in the new conference. All right. Team I like, ironically enough, when I started reading about them a little bit, and it was more predicated on the fact of their schedule more than anything. Oklahoma State, the Pokes, coming into this one, 7-6 last season, 4-5, kind of a disappointing season for Oklahoma State. 13 returning starters, 7 on the offense, 6 on the defensive side. Mike Gundy coming in for his whopping 19th year with the program. Stillwater, Oklahoma is the spot. 62nd toughest schedule in the country. Over and under on them is 6.5 wins. Spencer Sanders is no longer the quarterback. They move on. What are your thoughts on the Oklahoma State Cowboys?
Yeah, I agree with this. This is one of the teams that did catch some breaks with the schedule guns, right? They get to play BYU, UCF, Cincinnati, West Va, at Houston, right? They avoid Texas, they avoid Baylor. Yep. They get to play Central Arkansas and South Alabama, the first and third game of the year at home. At Arizona State, tough game. But yeah, I mean, this is a favorable schedule for Gundy. Should be interesting to see what happens. They lose, like you said, the 4-year starter, Spencer Sanders, to Ole Miss. I thought that was interesting.
That's a weird move. I would think he'd want to go someplace and play. He's going to be a backup.
He's right? Probably going to be a backup to Jackson Dart. I thought that was very interesting as well. I didn't understand that. I mean, they loved Spencer Sanders at Oklahoma State. Every game that I've gone to over the last 4 years of Oklahoma State versus Baylor, I mean, everybody always, Spence. Like, he's Jesus. So that was surprising to me. And do you know who they had to grab? They grabbed the veteran Alan Bowman, who transferred from Michigan, who really hasn't played since his freshman and sophomore year when he was at Texas Tech, and he wasn't anything special there either. So that's interesting because you're right. You look at Mike Gundy's teams, and you're used to that up tempo, high scoring offenses, and it hasn't really been that the last a couple of seasons for Gundy. Even with Spence, it hasn't been what you're used to seeing. So it should be interesting to see what Alan Bowman comes in and does. They only get back one of its top five. 1 out of their 5 top wide receivers from last year is back too. So it's not like that he's got all kinds of weapons here. There's going to be a lot of young and new faces for Gundy. And I still think one of the problems is that they're still trying to recover from losing defensive coordinator guru Jim Knowles to Ohio State. I mean, they were great on defense when Knowles was there. They were known as the best defense in the Big 12 because of him. And, he patented himself as a defensive coordinator, a guru. And, he's kind of did that at Ohio State as well, except for a couple of games where they got exposed. But the schedule's favorable. Avoiding Texas and Baylor is nice. I'm intrigued to see what happens here. I don't know which way to go. I feel like they could be good, and I feel like they could kind of be middle of the road as well.
Yeah. Alan Bowman coming from Texas Tech. I mean, they basically, you see a lot of these teams from the Big 12. They're basically just taking away the depth of the Texas Tech quarterback department and putting them into their spots as starters. Kind of a weird situation there for Oklahoma State on this one. I'm kind of, saying with what I saw from Spencer Sanders, at least the past couple of years, he hasn't really been explosive to me. He's been a competitor in some of these games, and he's really like shown out. But I don't think overall, when you look at him as a package, there's a little bit of a drop off of him, and especially the past couple of years. So we'll see what Alan Bowman does. Top two rushers, not with the team anymore. But I'm not really concerned about that either because nobody put over 573 yards. I think that was the top rusher for them last season, which is kind of and that rush and the second leading rusher was Spencer Sanders. So I'm not too concerned about this one. Gordon is their top rusher that's left 5.5 yards per carry last season. So he's got the talent in there. A couple of solid backups, including one from Michigan State. So we'll see if that running back form's got to be improved. And I think they will on this one. Top wide receiver is back. I know they're depleted on the wide receiver core, but they do get Brendan Presley back. But they lose everybody else, like you said. But they go to the transfer portal and get some experience. They get a good guy, solid wide receiver from Washington State, and they dip into Iowa. Maybe he's good, maybe he's not. Iowa, they're a great passing offense, right? So we'll see if that improves for them. Offensive line on this one, 4 starters back for them, plus they add a transfer from Texas State. You get a lot of these non-P5 guys with a lot of starting experience with some of these teams, and I really don't know what they can do. But we'll see how they do. They got to improve on the rushing pass blocking. I'm sorry, the rush blocking. 3.4 yards per carry only put up last season. Defensively, new defensive coordinator and Brian Nardo comes from Youngstown. I think he was a linebacker coach for Youngstown State when he was at D2. I don't really know much about him, but Mike Gundy, seems to find some of these guys out of nowhere, and then they end up being a good defensive coordinators. But we'll see about that one. At linebacker, actually, I kind of love this one here. They added Justin Wright from Tulsa. This guy's like absolutely solid, a great addition to this defense. And then they get 2 all Big 12 linebackers back as well. So that is going to be a strength to this defense. The defense has always been kind of the staple of Oklahoma State, and they really haven't had it since the DC left to go to Ohio State. I think this is going to be an upward movement for this team that gave up 436 yards last season and only put up 26 sacks. Overall, offense is in full transition mode. Defensive line lacks a lot of experience, including the secondary, but the linebacker core is going to be the heartbeat of that defense. And we talk about the favorable schedule on this one. Getting Kansas State and Oklahoma at home is big.
Yep.
And then they finished the year playing 4 out of 5 games versus new teams in that were in non-P conferences last year, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
So basically they're basically playing the AAC schedule at the back end of the year.
Yeah.
So the over and under in this one, it was kind of shocking to see it at 6.5. But when you look at the schedule, you can get them to 7 or 8 games based on who they're going to be playing, because all these teams that they're going to be playing are in transition.
Yep.
So I think a team that's experienced in playing in a P5 conference going against non-P5 teams has the advantage. And I'm going to be going Oklahoma State on this one. Cock the gun and fire the shot, baby. Over 6.5. I like it. Love it. Lock it in.
Okay. I don't hate it. I don't hate it. I think a lot is going to rely on how Bowman, plays out here. It hasn't been a starter in a couple of years, riding the bench over at Michigan. Let's see what he could do. He's capable. He's capable. He's a veteran. So
yep.
Everything's going to be riding on him.
Yeah. Big trust, because if he's out, Yeah, I think Mike
His
Gundy's
son.
son is
Oh
like the.
yeah, that's a
I think
problem.
he's still the third backup, but they had the same backups as last year, but those guys didn't do shit.
Yeah,
So
Gunner,
yeah, oh yeah,
Gunner.
if it goes to them, that team is in absolute
Yeah, they
done.
could be in trouble.
The next team on the board. Before we get to that, I got to tell everybody: shout out to Viva for sponsoring the Sports Wagering Network and sponsoring this show. I am drinking a beautiful grapefruit one right now, so go check them out. VivaSeltzer.com. 4.5 ABV, zero carbs, zero sugar, and delicious here in the sweltering summer on the East Coast and beyond. So go check them out. VivaSeltzer.com at Viva Seltzers on Twitter as well. All right, let's go to Texas Tech. Firing the guns here for the Red Raiders. Uh, Tyler Slough is back, including 17 returning starters, 11 on the offense, 6 on the defense. Joey McGuire, second year. Not a bad season, 8 wins, 5-4 in the conference. Lubbock, Texas is the spot. 20 is tough to schedule, however. Over and under in them is 7.5 wins. What are your thoughts on the Red Raiders, CT?
Yeah, I think Texas Tech could be a sleeper here. I played Texas Tech a couple months ago. I have plus 1,300 to win the Big 12. I think it's plus 1,100 right now. So it has moved a little bit, but I think that's worth a buck or two. They're very capable. Head coach Joey McGuire, I think he's going to be great long term for the Red Raiders. Great debut season last year, as you said. Start first year 8-5. This is a big season for them, and they get back a lot. 8 on offense, 6 on defense. So that's quite a bit back, and they avoid OU. That's advantage, a big advantage for them. And a tall task for week 2. Oregon comes to Lubbock, and they finish at Texas. So a couple of tough spots here, but I think they're going to be powerful on offense. All their key pieces are back. Their top 5 wideouts are back, so they'll be ready to rock and see what senior quarterback Tyler Show has here. Will he and can he be the leader and excel? I think he can. Joey McGuire, I have much a long time respect for Joe. He was a long time assistant at Baylor, and he says this team is at least 14 points better than last year, which had 8 wins. Defensive coordinator, they have a great coach in Tim DeRuyter. He has this defense going in the right direction. They led the Big 12 in sacks last year. They do lose obviously Tyree Wilson off the edge, but I've heard McGuire talk about it, and he feels as though he's got some players where he's going to be able to plug in, and they'll still be solid on both ends of both sides of the ball. I think this team could make some serious noise here, Guns. I like the over, and I don't mind a small little ticket on them to win the thing.
Yeah, there's no question that this offense is going to be great. I mean, getting slow back on that one. He only played 4 starts at the end of the season, but I think he won. Did he win all of them? I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
3 or 4 maybe, or yeah, he
yeah,
won
it was.
quite a bit of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he either won 3 out of the 4 or all of them. He had 60% pass completion rate, 7 touchdowns, 4 INTs in that run. And they get their top running back in Taj Brooks. And they also got a good backup in Cameron Valdez. So I think the running back is going to be strong. Top 5 receivers are back for Tech as well. And they get a great transfer here from Austin P, a guy you probably don't know, DeAndre McCray. He was 1,000-yard receiver for them in 2 seasons that he played there. So another great addition. So they're going to be really deep on the wide receiver end, which is perfect for Texas Tech offense. 4 starters back on the line as well, and they add some depth in the transfer portal with starting experience. One thing they need to improve on, though, they gave up 41 sacks last season, and only they're rushing. This was kind of a line. The offensive line basically just needs to improve altogether. So we'll see what happens there. But this team is going to be definitely scoring more points, I think, than last year. Defensively, 5 out of their top 6 tacklers have gone from last season. But this was a team that gave up 426 yards per game, 4.3 yards on the ground, and only had 30 sacks, 7.1 sack rate. I I want to see the defense is basically the question mark for me on this one. I really don't know what they've done to develop, but they weren't like a great defense last year, so I'm not really too concerned about them. Toughest games on the schedule, they got to play Oregon. They got to play in non-conference. They have to go up to Wyoming. Whether Wyoming's good or not, that's a tough place
Tough
to
place to
play.
play always. Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to get ready for that one at Baylor, Kansas State, and then you have at Texas. So tough schedule. They are 20th toughest in the country. 4 close wins by a possession or less last season, and a tough schedule altogether. This is just nothing I want to play. I really like the team on paper, but when you saw what they did last year, what the moves they made this year, I don't see much of an improvement. But I could be wrong on this one. This is a team to watch. I do like their offense, and I think that in the Big 12, all you do is need a tremendous offense, and you can get by with a mediocre defense. So
Correct.
we'll see how that team goes. I do think they're going to be on the upper side of the conference. I just don't know where they're going to end up altogether. All right, and now we get to your Baylor Bears. Coming into this one, not a great season for Dave Aranda. 6-7 last season, 4-5 in the conference. 12 returning starters, only 7 on the offense, 5 on the defense. 4th year for him under the regime. Waco, Texas is the spot. 46 toughest schedule in the country. Maybe a more favorable schedule this season than last. So over and under 7.5 wins. What are your thoughts on Baylor, CT?
Yeah, something was off last year with this team. Still don't know, and we kind of Baylor alum and fans haven't really figured it out here because Dave Aranda he's a great defensive minded coach, as Guns, and it just wasn't there last year. There it was not existent. So they get back Blake Shapen taking the snaps, who had a great freshman year debut when Gary Bohannon gets hurt at the end of the year. He comes in, plays great, ends up winning they win the Big 12 and they win the Sugar Bowl last year. Kind of comes into sophomore slump. So I thought it was interesting that Aranda named Shapen the starter so early after spring ball, because they got a transfer, Sawyer Robertson from Mississippi State, which I thought that it would have been nice to see them battle it out a little more in August. A lot of people were telling me how great he looked down there in spring ball, but we'll see. He's going to stick with Shapen as his guy. That could change. They're very, very young. They only return like you said, 6-6?
7-5, 12
7-5.
Yep.
Maneri Baldwin, the speedster wide receiver, and Richard Reese. They're big pieces. They're back. Reese was All-American freshman back last year, probably the best back in the Big 12. And they get a nice piece from the portal to help Reese carry the load here with the leading Pokes rusher from last year, Dominic Richardson. So it's going to be a nice little 1-2 combo punch there running the ball. They lost a ton on the offensive line. They had to rebuild the offensive line with transfers, which they can be good. Only time is going to be able to tell here as they plug them in. Well, I've been hearing unbelievable things about the transfer, Katron Jackson, the wideout transfer from Arkansas. I've been hearing things that he is just as fast as Tyquan Thornton and just as silky smooth on the routes as Denzel Mims. So that's going to be pretty exciting to see him and Baldwin. Baldwin should be nice targets for Shaping, but it's going to come down to how good the portal players could be, and if Aranda is going to light a fire under that defense. The defense needs to be better. They could be in the mix if the transfers work out, but they are going to be very, very young. They get to avoid OU. Tough game, September 9th, week 2. Utah comes to town here. Week 1 and 3, kind of freebie games with Texas State and Long Island. And then right away, they play Texas. So we're going to see how good this Baylor team is real quick when they play the Utes and Texas. So I think the number's set right. I think they might be a 7-win team. I think it's a stretch to win 8. I do.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they do get a little bit of leniency on the schedule on this one, but the parts and pieces. I don't know if they're there. I know they got a new DC on this one with Matt Powledge. He comes over from
Yeah.
Oregon, so there's going to be a little bit of transition there, developing that defense. Top 2 tacklers are gone for them as well. 2 starters back, but they get some transfer help at Utah State. Also, they get a solid linebacker back from the transfer portal from Liberty. I think he was their top linebacker there. So they get some help as far as developing that defense. Offensively, Blake Shapen is back. The rushing quorum looks pretty solid. The line is a little bit inexperienced. They do go to the transfer portal. They add somebody from BYU.
Twins from BYU.
Yeah, twins from BYU. So I don't know if this is going to be. We'll see as the season goes if they can actually develop as a unit. They so shoot. So I guess the pass and run protections are concerned for me. Defense does transition for the new DC 5 starters back and a questionable secondary. Tough games for them. They have to play Utah, Texas, Texas Tech, and at Kansas State. So, I mean, granted, they have to play some tough teams, but at least they get some of these guys at home. So that's going to help them a lot. And they just have, I mean, the biggest things I saw in this one, they got to fix their O line and their secondary. Those are the 2 I was kind of like, those are the biggest question marks for me personally. 7.5 wins. Yeah, 6. I think they're a bull caliber team, but I don't know I don't know if that's a 6-win team or an 8-win team. So I definitely think it's no lower than 6. But we'll see what happens for the rest of the season for Baylor Bears. Hopefully they keep Aranda around because I really like that coach a lot.
I do too.
Yep. All right. Speaking of a team that's on transition, this is a team that kind of shocked the world last year. TCU Horned Frogs. They were 13-2 last season, 9-0 in the conference. This year, unfortunately, they don't get a lot of returning starters. Only 3 on the offensive side, 7 on the defense, 10 overall. Sonny Dykes back for his full second year, I believe, with the team. Fort Worth, Texas is the spot, 40th toughest schedule in the country. Over and under on them is 7.5 wins. And no Max Dugan this season. What are your thoughts on the Horned Frog, CT?
Yeah, no Max, and Chandler Morris is he's going to be the guy taking the snaps to start the year, just like he did last year, Guns, before getting hurt in the opener. And that's what led Max Duggan to be the starter there. And, look what he did. The rest is literally history there, what that team did. Tipped my cap to the Frogs for last year. It was very impressive what he did. He takes over that team and he doesn't look back and he says, this is my job. They're the national runner-ups, and now they need to replace their top 2 rushers, the top 3 wideouts, a lot of key linemen. So yeah, we're gonna see what Sonny Dykes could do. But I think one of the greatest things that Sonny Dykes went and did in the offseason is he went and hired Kendall Briles. I think it's absolutely massive for the Frogs. Kendall's going to take over the play calling on offense. One of the best offensive coordinators in college football, in my opinion. This is the son of Art Briles, who turned the program around for the Baylor Bears. I think once they get the pieces into the mix here, I think Kendall's going to have the offensive explosive, just like he did at Baylor, Ole Miss, and Arkansas. Dykes, he went out and grabbed a couple of Bama transfers that can help at running back and wide out. But yeah, they're thin on who they get back here. I think they should be big and solid at the linebacker position. But I mean, there's a lot of holes in this for this team here. But if Dykes could find a way for their young secondary not to get exposed, because man, they're really, really young. I guess you can't really count them out. I mean, look what he did last year. That team kind of came out of nowhere. No one was expecting TCU to do what they did last year. It was unbelievable. What a run. So it should be interesting to see what happens. It's tough after coming off of what they did last year, man.
Yeah, they had a golden shoe up their ass in some
Yeah.
of these games, and it really pissed me off as a bettor because the spot was perfect to bet against them, and sometimes they just continue to figure out ways to upset you. But this year's going to be a little bit different. Granted, Chandler Morris is a serviceable quarterback. It's going to be interesting to see. We don't really know what he's going to be doing because he got hurt early in the season, and then Max Dugan took the job, and then he just launched. It was a launching pad for him to take over the team. Um, Wide receivers, you mentioned it. I mean, they basically just went to the transfer portal offense.
Yeah.
They just started getting a lot of these P5 guys, a lot of guys from the SEC. There's a lot of question marks everywhere they go, but they lost so much production. They had to do what they had to do. Defensively, I think the strength of the defense is going to be the linebackers. 6 of their top 7 linebackers are back
Yeah.
this season, so they're going to be great shape. But in the secondary, they lose their top corner, Tomlinson, who was a monster for them last year. But they do get 3 starters back outside of him. But to fill in that hole that Tomlinson left is I don't know if that's going to be something that's going to be done this season. And then they got a lot of tough games. They got to go at Texas Tech, at Oklahoma, at Kansas State. And their last 4 games after the bye, this is the schedule that they have after their bye. They have at Texas Tech, Texas, Baylor, at Oklahoma. That's
Yeah.
how they finish off the season. It's going to be a real tough road for them, especially with a team as inexperienced and depleted as they are. I think this is definitely a downgrade. And obviously, with the number sitting at 7.5, it's telling you the story of
Yeah.
what they project this team to be. And they also had 5 wins by a possession or less last season. I mean, the whole season could have been tilted a different direction in a lot of these games, and they were just so good, and it was just a great story for them to get to the national championship altogether. Kudos to them, but I think this is going to be a downgrade season here for TCU. And it's not a hot take. I mean,
Sure.
obviously, after what happened last season, I don't think you're going to see much for the Horcruxes. 7 or 8 wins, maybe, but it's nothing I'm going to actually put a locked-in bet on for our future on over and under wins.
Yeah, their last 5, man, that's murderers row at K-State, at Texas Tech, Texas, Baylor, at OU. It's man, that's a tough way to end.
Yeah, and especially you're basically hitting the reset button.
Yeah,
and starting over fresh. I don't know about this team at all. Just tough at the back end of the schedule. And let's talk about the Big 12 champion, shall we? This is a team I put a lot of money on in the Big 12. And actually, the last I would say last 3 games, TCU, I got my money back from them with Baylor. I think it was Baylor, Kansas State, and then of course, when they played Michigan. Actually, 4 games because I took with Georgia too. So thank you, TCU. I apologize for telling me to lose money. All right, let's talk Kansas State though. 10-4 in the conference, 7-2. 10-4 altogether, 7-2 in the conference. 13 starters back, 8 on the offense, 5 on the defense. Chris Kleiman is back, 5th year with the team. Manhattan, Kansas, 15th toughest schedule this season, and they do lose some production, especially at the running back position. Over and under is 7.5 wins. I'll pass to you, CT. What are your thoughts on the Wildcats?
Yeah, so last year, right, we saw head coach Chris Kleiman, who I think is one of the best coaches in the Big 12, if not the best. They got the transfer, Adrian Martinez from Nebraska, and man, he gave him a shot, but that was the wrong choice. And then finally, Will Howard takes over. And Kleiman stuck with him, and that was the correct decision. He's now back for his 4th season at K-State, and he's going to be the leader of this team, and I think that's rightfully so. They get back their entire offensive line to protect them, and 3 of them are 5th-year seniors, so that helps. But Deuce Vaughn is gone, but I'm hearing really, really good things about DJ Giddens, and Kleiman has said that this is just going to be a nice little plug-in, and Giddens is just going to be fine. Of course, they'll miss Deuce. He was great at Kansas State, but they should be all right running the ball here. And they returned 7 on offense, but only one starting wide receiver, and that's senior Phillip Brooks, who I love. He made some great catches in that Big 12 championship game versus TCU. I was on Kansas State in that game. The kid played out of his mind, so excited to see him back. He'll be a nice target there for Howard. 5 back on defense, and the defense is kind of the question mark for right now. They lost a lot to the draft, so we're gonna have to see what that brings here. But just by having a great coach with Chris Kleiman and a nice trigger man with Will Howard, they will be a contender once again. That is for sure.
Yeah, I think, like you said, Bess, when I was analyzing this team, I think the defense was the big question mark that I had on this one. This is a team that had a plus 12 turnover margin last season, and that was a lot predicated on their secondary, who they're losing their top two corners from last season. But let's talk about the offense here. Will Howard is back, so the position is going to be real solid for him. Pro style QB, and I think that's what Kleiman wants to run, even though Adrian Martinez was more of a dual threat. Wanted to, more run first than wanted to pass the ball. So I think Will Howard in his second year will be fine. They do lose Deuce Vaughn, as you mentioned. And yeah, I do like DJ Giddens. He had 5.8 yards per carry, but they also got a good transfer from Florida State and Tayshawn Ward Jr. 6.6 yards per carry for that team when he was there. So between those two, I think that's a solid running back core for them. Good combination, even though Deuce is gone. I think the production may be on that same level with just the two of them. But you mentioned the wide receivers on this one. Phillip Brooks is back, and they got the offensive line. This is an offensive line last year. If you don't know their stats, they were their running backs are putting up 5.1 yards per carry on average, 5.4% sack rate. So they're going to improve as a line altogether. And Will Howard's going to be comfortable in that pocket, I think, for the Wildcats. But we talked about, like I said, the defense on this one. They did get a lot of their success from the turnover ratios and getting the ball back into their offensive hands. But this year, the defensive line was not really strong last season. I think they had 6 sacks as a unit last year. They do add some guys from the transfer portal, and they lose their top pass rushers. So they're going to have to get to the quarterback. They'll have to find a way to get there. But I thought that was interesting. The defensive line only put up 6 sacks, but they had 30 altogether. So that's a testament to the linebacker core, who are all back for this team. So, and they add some depth. So the linebacker core is going to be really strong. But I mentioned the D-backs, they lose their top 2 corners. That's going to be a rebuild. They go to non-P5 and JUCO to kind of fill in the spots. It's kind of like JUCO has always been the spot for Kansas State all over the years. So we'll see if those guys can kind of meld in and somehow produce. I don't think they're going to get to the level of the production that they did last year, but we'll see about that one. Big question marks for me there. As far as their schedule, they got at Oklahoma State, at Texas Tech, at Texas, and at Kansas. They lose a lot of stars, but this is and they also have that moniker on their back that says, "I'm the Big 12 champion. Please beat me." So a lot of teams are going to look at that and circle that on their schedule. So that's also a tough spot. I do think the team is going to regress altogether. Over and under is 7.5 wins. I just want to wait and see what that defense can do. It's nothing I want to play right now. I have questions on the defensive side for Kansas State. All right, moving to the top, allegedly the 2 top Big 12 teams projected this season, and also the 2 teams that are moving the hell out of the Big 12. Let's start with the hat that I'm wearing right now, the Longhorns.
Sure.
Going on this one, a lot of hype on them last season, but they unfortunately they finished the season only 8-5. 16 returning starters for them and 10 on the offensive side, which is key. 6 on the defense. Sarkisian in his 3rd year. This is one of those key moniker years. Are you the guy? Or are you not the guy? That's what you have to find with head coaches. Austin, Texas is the spot, and they got a tough schedule to back it. 10th in the country. Over and under, though, 9.5 wins. What are your thoughts on the Longhorns, CT?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it here. They're going to be loaded, and especially on offense, like you said. I mean, they probably on paper have the best offense in the conference. We'll see what they do with that. They have to replace the stud running back Bijan Robinson. But Sark will be able to adjust. He's got a couple underclassmen that should plug in just fine there. The true Frosh, CJ Baxter, he's the nation's #1 running back in the 2023 recruiting class. They got an unbelievable transfer wideout from Georgia, AD Mitchell. I mean, this guy was unbelievable at Georgia's, and now it's a nice little new toy for Quinn Ewers to play with. And if Ewers plays like he's capable of playing, and this Texas team they're going to be scary good, man. There's no doubt about it. There's tons of talent at wideout and tight end. Defense, they get back 6 starters, a solid defensive line. They have the pieces to be great, and I hear Ewers is much improved from last year. They do. Well, we remember the game last year versus Alabama. They had that game won, and right, what happens? Nick Saban pulls at Nick Saban, and Bryce Young comes down with less than a minute left, and they end up winning the game. Now they travel. That game was in Texas. Now they travel to Alabama week 2. You got a gimme game week 1 versus Rice, and you go to Bama week 2. So you're right into the thick of things for the Horns, and then you get Wyoming at home, and then you're at Baylor. So there's not a real delay here in teams that they're in good quality teams that they're playing. They travel to Bama, like I said, TCU, Baylor. They play OU in Dallas in the Red River Shootout. The schedule's tough. This is the best team Sark has had since his 5-7 debut in 2021. We're going to see if he could finally put it together here. But if there's anybody that could fuck it up, it's definitely Sark.
Yeah, I was like, this team is stacked to the gills.
Yep.
There's no excuses with this team this season. Quinn Ewers is back, and I think we go back to that Alabama game. He did get hurt in that game, and I think ever since he got hurt that game, I don't think he was ever 100%, even when he was playing later in the season. Hudson Card, the insurance factor is gone, but guess who you get a better insurance card with Arch Manning.
Yep.
So he's going to be breathing down Quinn's neck if he does not perform to a high level as expected from Steve's team. Bijan is gone, but you have CJ Baxter that's going to be one of the top guys in the country eventually. If not, he may start out like explosive as a freshman. And you have 5 starters back on the offensive line. 5.3 yards per carry they put up. They allowed their running backs to get last season and only 18 sacks. So this team is going to be, the offensive line is going to be much improved. And then you mentioned the UGA transfer, the wide receivers. This offense is going to be absolutely electric. Defensively, the 3 of their top 4 tacklers are back this season. D-backs, 2 starters are back, and they had a slew of veterans to strengthen the group. So whether they had missing pieces, they went to the transfer portal and just got solid guys to go fill in. So everybody wants to play at Texas right now, and it makes sense. Now, when you look at what happened to them last season, 8-5 last season, but they had 3 close losses by a possession or less, including Bama by 1 point, and that was the Bryce Young drive down the field and put them into, have them get the W, and they lost to Texas Tech in overtime. So this is stuff that's going to kind of flip this season, and I think this is a 10-win team. They do have to go to Bama this season. They get the Red River Shootout, which is going to be an absolute circle game for both of those teams when we get to Oklahoma here in a second. They get Kansas State at home, good spot at TCU if TCU is good. I don't know. And then they get at Baylor. But even with the loss of Bijan Robinson, I think this offense is going to kind of transition and get more balance on the passing game. You got Quinn Ewers that's healthy, and also you got if he gets hurt, Arch Manning's right there to step in. So I think this is going to be a great team, 10-win team plus. I know 9.5 wins is there, but I think when we look at this Texas versus Oklahoma, we're going to probably see 2 games there coming into the Big 12 championship. I don't want to play this one myself because I like the other team a little bit better. I think you do too. But that's what I think about Texas. But let's talk about the Boomer Sooners. When you look at this team and you see them on paper and you do the research on them, there's a lot of missing parts and pieces in this team. But when you start piecing everything together and you put the puzzle pieces together, you're seeing a team that I'm like, this team can win 10 games, maybe 11. It's like, this is in a good spot. And I love Brent Venables. So 6-7 last season, 3-6 in the conference, 13 returning starters. Norman, Oklahoma is a spot number 49th in the country as far as tough schedule is concerned. Over and under is 9.5 currently. But I think, CT, you got a better number on that one. Let me hear your thoughts on Oklahoma.
Yeah, I'm really high on the Sooners this year, and I played Oklahoma over 9 wins a few weeks ago at the Win Encore here in Boston, and they moved it to 9.5 right after I bet it.
You bastard!
Sorry about that, Guns. But yeah, I still like over 9.5 wins. I would completely agree with you. I think this is a 10, if not 11 win team. Venables' debut in Boomer Soonerland it didn't go as planned, right? It didn't go as well as planned, and he went 6-7, 7 games. Was the most lost games at OU in 25 years. So this is something that Oklahoma faithful is not used to seeing and experiencing. And he only notched 3 conference wins, and man, they got blasted by Texas, 49-0. So. It was a tough year, but I want to point out 4 of those losses were close games and only lost by a field goal. So I don't think Venables is as far off, as everybody thinks. He brings back both coordinators and the trigger man with Gabriel. The Venables and staff also didn't waste any time. They hit the transfer portal really hard. Bunch of strong transfers that should help them to look like the OU we're used to seeing. Offensive coordinator Jeff Lebby. He's Art Briles' son-in-law, married to Art's daughter. He's going to have the offense explosive and rolling, like we're kind of used to seeing here. Gabriel back for another season. He's one of the top trigger men in the Big 12. Offensive line will be solid to protect them. They get all 5 starting offensive linemen back to protect Gabriel. Like I said, the transfers are good. Watch for the Michigan transfer, Andrell Anthony. He's going to be a breakthrough player this year for the Sooners and a nice target for Gabriel as well. So Venables, as we all know, defensive-minded coach, great at Clemson, known for that, for pretty much inventing that Clemson defense. And they're going to be a lot better on the defensive side of the ball this year. It's actually almost impossible for the D to be worse. They get back 7 starters. That's not going to hurt. The schedule is favorable, very favorable with the expansion. They only face one top team away from home, and that's Texas. They probably are going to be favored. We were talking about this off air, in 11 of the 12 games. They avoid K-State, they avoid Baylor, and they avoid Texas Tech. Look at the opening games here, Guns. Arkansas State, SMU, at Tulsa, at Cincinnati, Iowa State at home. Then after you have 5 nice little warm-up games. Then you go play in the Red River Shootout October 7th versus Texas. There'll be slight dogs in that game. You get UCF at home, at KU, at Okie State, Westphal at home, at BYU, TCU at home. All their big games outside of Oklahoma State are at home. And I like this team a lot this year. I think this is a 10, if not 11 team win. I am with you. I think that Texas will be playing Oklahoma for the Big 12 championship like the olden days. One last Texas OU Big 12 final before they depart for the SEC. I played over 9 wins. I played over 9.5 wins for a little bit as well. And I played plus 380 to win the Big 12 because I expect them to be in the Big 12 championship, Gun. Guns, and plus 380 is far more superior of a number than you will get than on Big 12 Championship Saturday.
Bang! That's how it is done, and I can't agree with this play more. I'm on the over, but I didn't get it at 9. I got it at 9.5. Dylan Gabriel is back for this team, like you said. 63% pass completion rate, 25 touchdowns, 6 INTs, solid numbers. And also they have a good quarterback in the waiting in Jackson Arnold. So even if there is some insurance factor in there, similar to Texas, they do lose their top running back in Eric Gray. But they do have solid recruits there as well. So Venables did well in the recruiting as far as the quarterback and the running back is concerned. They do lose their top 2 receivers in Mims and Willis. They do add a lot of depth in the transfer portal, though, so I think that group is going to be fine. O-line, they went and bought some depth in the transfer portal. Stanford, TCU, Cal, and App State altogether, all guys with starting experience. So this is a really deep group altogether, including the starters that come back for Oklahoma together. Defensively, which is Brent Venables' bread and butter on this one, the D line is going to be stronger and more experienced with 3 returning starters back and a slew of transfers to kind of plug in the holes. Linebacker corps, they get a solid transfer from Indiana and Dasan McCullough. That they're going to be a lot stronger in the linebackers. They do lose 5 out of their top 7 corners from last season, but they go right to the transfer portal again, and most of the guys that are going to be starting for them are juniors and seniors, so they've been with the team, either been with the team for a while or are just some solid transfers with starting experience. But you mentioned the schedule on this one. Like I said, 49th toughest in the country. Their road games, like you said, at Tulsa, at Cincinnati, at Kansas, at Oklahoma State, at BYU. So really, what do you see? The toughest one, what? Oklahoma State, maybe?
At Oklahoma State.
That's going to be the one that's going to be a circle game. Yeah. And I think last year, I want to say they lost to Oklahoma State. I don't remember if that, don't quote me on that one. So there may be a revenge factor in that game.
Yeah, they probably did. I mean, they only won 4.
I think it was, and I just don't remember. And of course, you got the Red River Shootout. We're going to call it the shootout. I don't call it a rivalry. We talked about this off the air. And then they get TCU at home. And then, Oklahoma State. So the schedule works for them. So I was counting this. I'm like, 10 wins, 10 wins, 10 wins. Yep. I was like, this is a 10-win team, and anything below 10, I'm going to be taking here. And I think this team is going to be contending with Texas to win the Big 12 championship. And by God, you have the Red River Shootout. And then if you have them in the Big 12 championship, 2 teams that are leaving the damn conference. I want to see it so bad. I'm going to be taking this one here. Give me Oklahoma over 9.5 wins as the official play from the gun. All right.
Love
it. We've broken down the future plays, but let's recap for the people. CT, your future picks over and under wins. What do you got?
So I played Kansas over 5.5 wins. I played Texas Tech over 7.5 wins. And I've played Oklahoma over 9 wins, over 9.5 wins, and plus 380 to win the Big 12. We talked about a lot of those other newbie teams at the beginning of the show. If you can find a good number on any of those, I don't mind the under on on BYU, on Cincinnati, Central Florida. I think is going to be the better of the 4, like we talked about. So those might be teams that I get an under ticket on, but nothing official on that so far. Just the 3 over so far.
My 3 official on this one. I kind of went light with this conference. I usually pick like 4 or 5, but this one only saw 3 good spots that I liked. I took the over 9.5 on Oklahoma Sooners, and then I went to their rival Oklahoma State, and I like the over on that one as well, 6.5. Just more predicated on the schedule, more so the transition of the team. And then of course I like the under 6.5 Kansas wins, as CT got the over on 5.5. I think it's a 6-win team, period. Yep. I think it's a flat 6. And that's what I wrote here in my notes and circled it. That's why I like under 6.5. And you can still find that, I think, on FanDuel and Caesars, if I'm not mistaken. I checked before the show. But that's going to do it here for the Big 12. Before we close them out, CT, tell them where they can find you on the social media verse.
Yeah, on Twitter at CTBets16. You can catch me over at wagertalk.com as well. Going to be doing a lot more shows come football season at Wager Talk on the Hustle Show Pod every Wednesday. Right now it's at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, but we moved that to 6 o'clock during football season. And I'm over there with Kelly in Vegas, Adam Trigger, Drew Martin Betts, Joe Ranieri for the Hustle Show Pod. Brian Power and Mark Zeno also fill in from time to time as well. So CTBX16 on Twitter is the best place to find me. I post everything for free.
So you're saying that you, even though you had some guys go to the transfer portal, you built some depth and dipped into Brian Power and Mark Zeno. Is that what you're trying to tell the people?
Yeah, summertime is tough. I'm not a baseball guy. BP and Zeno are baseball guys, so they step in when people can't fill the show. Summertime is hard, but the core four will be back and intact. I think middle of August for our first show.
Beautiful. We don't like it. We love it here. So give them a little bit of that. And for me, just go to Sports Witchery Network on YouTube. And of course, the Shark of the Gun is going to be coming back this fall, starting week 0. And that's going to be on the Shark channel this year. And it's going to be absolutely electric, like it was last season. If you don't know how I did last year, let me put the record up there for you. 169, 36, and 6 plus 45 units, baby. 55.4%. And if you want to check my last 3 years in college football, it is my best sport. 440, 371, and 7 plus 80.2 units. Bang. We load the gun, we fire the shot. That's all we do here for Sports Wagering Network. But that's going to do it for the Big 12. Next week, actually this weekend, we're going to be doing the Pac-12, and I'm going to be joined with Mark Zeno. So please check that out. We had to move the schedule a little bit. I know I said we're going to do Mark last week, but he had some other obligations to do, but he will be back this weekend to break down Pac-12, and what a conference, especially from a quarterback standpoint. It's going to be fun to do. Yeah. So until next time, for the Gunzpicks College Football Show, we say goodbye. Good luck with your bets. And as always, let's keep dancing. Bang.